There is a quiet but undeniable truth that many of us have come to understand, often too late. We live in a world that calls us to show kindness and compassion to others, yet somehow it is these very qualities that seem to leave us vulnerable. The more we give of ourselves, the more we risk being taken for granted. The more we act with grace, the more some see it as weakness. And the more we open our hearts, the more others may trample on that very tenderness. It is a paradox, one that leaves us bewildered and sometimes even disillusioned. But let me tell you something. Your kindness is not the problem. It is the response of others that tells you more about them than it does about you. To be kind in a world that is not always kind in return is a true measure of strength. So, while it may seem at times that kindness invites disrespect, it is in these moments we are called to reflect on the deeper values that guide us. For when we face such adversity, it is not our nature that should change, but our understanding of the world around us. The world we live in often teaches us that survival is rooted in self-interest, a lesson that begins from the earliest days of our existence. It's a principle so ingrained in human nature that we scarcely question it. We see it in the business world, in politics, and in personal relationships. People make choices based on what benefits them, often at the expense of others. In this landscape, kindness is a rarity, and when it does appear, it stands out. But rather than being seen as a strength, it is frequently perceived as a vulnerability, an opportunity for exploitation. In a world that revolves around self-preservation, kindness can easily be misinterpreted as a form of weakness. When you offer someone kindness, you open yourself up, allowing them to see your humanity. This raw vulnerability is not always met with gratitude or respect. Too often others take advantage of it, seeing your goodwill as something to be used, manipulated, and discarded when no longer needed. Your kindness becomes a commodity, something they can benefit from, not a gift freely given. It is not an uncommon occurrence for a kind act to be met with ingratitude or disregard. When someone offers help, love, or understanding without expecting anything in return, that selfless act can sometimes expose them to disrespect. And why? Because in a world where self-interest reigns, those who place others above themselves are often seen as naive, perhaps even foolish. The expectation is that everyone will act in their own best interest. To offer anything without the promise of personal gain disrupts the order that many have come to expect. It is unsettling. It's uncomfortable. It challenges the norm. But here lies the painful truth: kindness, when placed in the hands of someone who does not understand its value, can be devalued. What should be a mutual exchange of goodwill is instead viewed as an opportunity to take advantage of another's goodwill. This isn't always a deliberate act of malice, but a reflection of how deeply ingrained this principle of self-interest is in society. People, especially those who are only concerned with their own immediate desires or needs, can fail to recognize the deeper value of kindness. They may not understand that it costs something: real time, energy, and emotional investment. The person who is consistently kind may find themselves disregarded not because their actions are unworthy, but because others, conditioned by a self-serving worldview, do not know how to value them. This doesn't diminish the kindness itself. It simply exposes the harsh reality of a world that places little importance on selfless acts. It's a dangerous cycle. The more selfless you are, the more vulnerable you become. You give, expecting nothing in return, and in return you often receive little more than disregard. Yet if you pull back, if you choose to stop offering your kindness, the world will chastise you for being cold and indifferent. You cannot win. This world does not always reward the pure-hearted. Instead, it punishes them with invisibility or worse, exploitation. To be a kind person in a world that thrives on self-interest is to walk a difficult path, but it is one that ultimately speaks to the strength of your character. It is a natural human instinct to expect something in return for what we give, but what happens when that expectation is not met? Kindness, when extended without strings attached, is often perceived by others as an invitation to take more than they offer back. We live in a transactional society where the principle of reciprocity dictates the flow of relationships. If you give, you expect to receive, whether it's gratitude, favor, or even a return of kindness. But what happens when your kindness is met with silence, apathy, or even exploitation? What do you do when the very people you've helped or shown care for disregard your efforts? This lack of reciprocity can be devastating. It's not just about the material things we give, but the emotional and mental investment we put into others. When kindness is offered in good faith, there is often an unspoken hope that it will be returned in some form, whether as a simple thank you or as a willingness to support in times of need. However, this isn't always the case. People may take your kindness, absorb its warmth, but fail to acknowledge it, let alone return it. At the heart of this disappointment lies the human desire for balance. We crave fairness. We want the scales of life to tip in our favor when we make an effort for others. But life doesn't always work that way. In the absence of reciprocity, your kindness can begin to feel like a burden rather than a blessing. You begin to wonder if your generosity is being used, and if so, why? Is it simply because you are a kind person and people have learned to expect it from you? The problem with unreciprocated kindness is not just that it goes unnoticed, it's that it highlights the imbalance of relationships. People might take your kindness for granted, believing that you will always be there to offer it. They might see your good deeds as something to exploit, a never-ending reservoir they can draw from without ever offering anything in return. The danger here is not only in the disrespect this invites, but in the gradual erosion of self-worth that occurs when your kindness is seen as an entitlement rather than a gift. Without reciprocity, kindness can feel like an empty gesture, as if it exists for the benefit of others and not for you. And yet, the beauty of genuine kindness lies in its unconditional nature. It does not ask for anything in return. But in a world where everything seems to have a price, the act of giving without expectation is met with confusion, resentment, and sometimes even contempt. This lack of reciprocity can be a powerful force, driving a wedge between you and others, or even within your own heart. You may begin to question whether your kindness has been misplaced. You might even wonder if it's worth the pain and disappointment of being taken for granted. The truth is, however, that the absence of reciprocity does not diminish the value of your kindness. It simply reveals the limitations of those who receive it. The world may not always reward your selflessness, but that does not mean your kindness has been in vain. In fact, the ability to continue offering kindness despite the lack of return is one of the greatest acts of strength you can exhibit. There is a common misconception that kindness is synonymous with weakness. People who lead with compassion and gentleness are often viewed as passive or submissive. In truth, the very act of kindness demands an inner strength that few can truly comprehend. To be kind in a world that is often cold, indifferent, and ruthless requires a resilience that surpasses mere physical endurance. It takes courage to remain soft when the world pushes you to harden your heart. When you choose kindness, you don't do so out of weakness, you do so out of an understanding that strength comes not from dominance, but from humility. The misconception that kindness equals weakness often comes from those who equate power with aggression or force. In their eyes, if you're not fighting back, if you're not defending yourself with harsh words or actions, you must be weak. But they fail to see the truth. The greatest power lies in your ability to remain calm, composed and compassionate in the face of adversity. True strength is found in the choice to rise above the temptation to retaliate or to meet anger with anger. It's easy to be harsh, to close off, to build walls around your heart, but it takes a far greater power to remain open and vulnerable while offering others the kindness they may not deserve. Kindness is not about being a doormat. It is about having the strength to stand firm in your values, regardless of how others may perceive or treat you. It's about having the discipline to act with integrity, even when the world expects you to abandon it for the sake of self-preservation. Choosing kindness means rejecting the easy path of revenge or cynicism. It means resisting the temptation to retaliate when others are unkind to you. This is not a sign of weakness. It is a demonstration of inner fortitude. Kindness is a powerful act of rebellion in a world that too often celebrates conflict and division. In a world where power is often defined by the ability to dominate, kindness becomes a subversive act. To be kind is to choose empathy over ego, connection over isolation, and love over hate. It requires an awareness of the human condition, an understanding that the world does not operate in black and white, but in shades of grey. It's an acknowledgement that even the people who hurt you have their own wounds and struggles. And yet, to extend kindness to those who have wronged you is not to condone their actions, but to rise above them. It is an act of strength because it requires the discipline to remain true to your own values despite the temptations of bitterness or revenge. So when you offer kindness, don't mistake it for weakness. In truth, it is the deepest form of power, the ability to soften the harshness of the world around you, to refuse to let others drag you down to their level, is a form of resilience that few can master. It's the ability to continue giving, even when you have been taken advantage of. It's the choice to remain compassionate when the world seems cold. Kindness, when done with integrity, is an act of strength and character. 4. The price of integrity. Integrity is not a convenient value to uphold. It comes at a price, a cost that many are not willing to pay. In a world where compromise and convenience often reign supreme, integrity stands as a beacon of truth, demanding your unwavering commitment. When you choose to act with integrity, you make a decision to stay true to your beliefs, even when the world encourages you to take the easier, more comfortable path. This often means choosing the harder road, the road less traveled, the one where kindness and honesty do not always bring immediate rewards. Integrity often places you at odds with others. It means standing firm in your principles, even when those around you are willing to bend or break their own. It's in these moments of resistance that your integrity is tested. People may push you to compromise, to give in to the temptation of shortcuts, to lower your standards to fit into the mold of what others expect. But when you choose to hold fast to your values, when you choose to act with kindness, honesty and honor, you pay a price. The price is discomfort. The price is the risk of alienation. The price is often loneliness. Choosing integrity means making difficult decisions. It means turning away from opportunities that might benefit you materially or socially, but violate your moral compass. It means being willing to sacrifice personal gain for the sake of what is right. Integrity does not come without sacrifice. It demands that you stay true to who you are, even when it costs you something significant. And when it comes to kindness, this price becomes even more apparent. Kindness requires you to invest emotionally and mentally, to put yourself out there, even when it may not be returned in kind. When your integrity is tied to your kindness, it becomes even more vulnerable to exploitation. People may take your kindness for granted, expecting it to always be there, and never fully acknowledging the price you've paid to maintain it. In this sense, kindness is often intertwined with integrity. When you choose to be kind, you choose to stay true to the best version of yourself, to remain unwavering in your commitment to empathy and compassion. But this commitment comes at a cost. It may mean enduring the sting of being misused or misunderstood. It may mean that others take advantage of your generosity without ever giving anything back. But here lies the truth: the cost of integrity is not a sign of weakness, but of strength. It is a measure of your character, your willingness to stand by your values no matter the external pressures. When you pay the price of integrity, you are investing in something much greater than immediate rewards or recognition. You are building a foundation of self-respect and dignity, something that cannot be taken away by the actions of others. Your integrity, your kindness are not for sale. They are the bedrock upon which your character is built, and while they may be tested, they cannot be broken. The price of integrity is high, but the rewards are immeasurable. Integrity allows you to sleep at night, knowing that your actions align with your values. It gives you peace of mind, knowing that you stood by your principles, even when the world tried to pull you in another direction. Integrity and kindness go hand in hand. They are not easy to maintain in a world that often rewards dishonesty and exploitation, but when you hold on to both, you create a life that is richer, more fulfilling, and more meaningful than any material success could ever provide. To be truly kind is not just to offer a hand, but to understand the human condition, to see the wounds beneath the surface, and to meet others where they are in their journey. This understanding carries with it a heavy burden, one that many are not prepared to bear. It requires you to engage not just with a person's actions, but with their heart, their fears, their struggles. And it is precisely this deep empathy that can make kindness so difficult to sustain. To offer kindness with understanding means looking beyond the surface, seeing the complexity of those around you. People do not always act out of malice. Often their behavior is a reflection of their own pain, their own unresolved issues, or the weight of their experiences. Kindness, in its most genuine form, is the ability to empathize with that pain and offer a gesture of care, despite the hurt they may inflict upon you. It is easy to respond to cruelty with cruelty, to return selfishness with selfishness. But understanding that people are shaped by their experiences, and that many of us act out of unresolved wounds, calls for a level of compassion that goes beyond surface-level kindness. The burden of understanding is heavy because it forces you to see things through the lens of others, to carry the emotional weight of their struggles. You are no longer just a giver of kindness, but a silent witness to the deep pains people carry, pains that often go unnoticed by the rest of the world. This awareness can be overwhelming. It means that your heart is constantly open, constantly receptive to the world's hurt, and that can be exhausting. In your attempts to lift others, you may find that their burdens start to weigh on you. The more you understand their struggles, the more you feel the depth of their pain, and the harder it becomes to keep your own heart from becoming burdened in return. But to withdraw, to close your eyes to the suffering around you, is to abandon the very essence of what kindness is meant to be. It would be easier to harden yourself, to stop caring, to protect yourself from the emotional toll that understanding brings. But in doing so, you lose something far more precious than comfort. You lose your humanity. Kindness without understanding is superficial. It lacks depth. It lacks connection. It's easy to be kind when you're not fully present in another person's life, when you don't truly know what they're going through. But to be truly kind is to meet the person in their struggle and offer your support, not as a superficial gesture, but as an acknowledgement of their pain. When you understand the struggles of others, you become an anchor for them. You offer them not just your time or resources, but your emotional presence. It requires patience, empathy, and a willingness to bear witness to their humanity. But this depth of connection can also make you vulnerable. You cannot truly understand someone without also seeing their flaws, their shortcomings, and sometimes their destructive behaviors. In doing so, you may find yourself exposed to the very things you wish to heal. Understanding others fully means taking on their emotional baggage, at least partially, and that can sometimes feel unbearable. But it is a burden that, though heavy, gives meaning to your kindness. It is through this understanding that we truly connect with others. It is through this shared humanity that we build relationships that transcend the surface and touch the heart. Respect is a fundamental need for all human beings. It affirms our worth, reinforces our value, and nurtures our sense of dignity. But what happens when respect is withheld? When, despite all your efforts, you find yourself disrespected by those you have offered kindness? The temptation is to retaliate, to strike back, to demand recognition. But the real growth comes not from fighting for respect, but from learning to rise above the disrespect without compromising your integrity. Disrespect is an unfortunate reality in life. It comes in many forms: dismissive words, betrayal, or the refusal to acknowledge your efforts. And yet, disrespect is not a reflection of who you are, it is a reflection of who the other person is. People who disrespect others often do so out of their own insecurities, fears, or unhealed wounds. They may not understand the value of kindness or may take it for granted. In these moments, it is crucial to remember that their actions are not a measure of your worth, but a measure of their own lack of understanding or maturity. Choosing to respond to disrespect with continued kindness is not an easy task. Every fiber of your being may scream to demand recognition, to show them the consequences of their actions. But the true power lies in maintaining your composure, in refusing to stoop to their level. It is in these moments of disrespect that your character is truly tested. Will you react with bitterness, or will you choose to remain steadfast in your values? Will you allow their actions to define you, or will you define yourself by how you respond to them? The growth that comes from being disrespected is not about changing who you are, but about learning to maintain your integrity despite the challenges. It is easy to be kind when others are kind in return. But when your kindness is met with indifference, ingratitude, or outright disrespect, that is where true growth lies. It is in these moments that you are called to reflect on your own sense of self-worth and to remember that your value is not tied to how others treat you. It is rooted in who you are, in your commitment to kindness, and in your ability to stand firm in your principles. Through disrespect, you learn the power of resilience. You learn that kindness is not about seeking recognition or external validation. It is about remaining true to yourself, no matter the external circumstances. It is about developing a thicker skin, not by becoming jaded or cynical, but by understanding that your worth is not diminished by the actions of others. You learn the art of emotional detachment, the ability to give without expecting anything in return, to offer kindness even when you know it may be misused or unacknowledged. In doing so, you grow not only in your capacity for kindness, but in your strength to endure life's hardships without losing your compassion. Each instance of disrespect is an opportunity for growth. It is an invitation to dig deeper into your own soul, to cultivate patience, and to become more resilient in the face of adversity. Instead of allowing disrespect to break you down, let it build you up. Let it deepen your understanding of what it means to live with integrity and to keep offering your kindness even when it seems to go unappreciated. It is easy to believe that kindness will be met with appreciation, that every generous act will be reciprocated with words of gratitude or an acknowledgement of your effort. However, there is a painful reality that often comes with offering kindness: silence. The silence from those you help, from those you support, and from those whose lives you've touched. This silence is not always born of ingratitude or malicious intent. It can simply reflect the apathy or indifference of a world that has grown accustomed to receiving without giving, to taking without truly acknowledging what it costs the giver. There is a deeper, almost tragic element to this silence. When you offer kindness, you expose a part of yourself, your humanity, your vulnerability, your willingness to engage with others without expectation. Yet, in a world where people are often so caught up in their own struggles, in their own needs, this offering can go unnoticed. People may take your kindness for granted, believing it is simply there for the taking, without considering the emotional or personal cost it carries. The silence in return for your generosity is not a reflection of your worth, but a reflection of the disconnect that exists between your intentions and the world's capacity to understand them. This silence can sting. It is not always a loud, overt rejection, but a subtle, pervasive absence. When you offer something, whether it's your time, your help, or your love, you often do so with the unspoken hope that it will be acknowledged. You hope for a simple thank you, a recognition of the effort you've invested. But when this recognition is absent, you begin to question, was it worth it? Did they even notice? The silence can cause doubt to creep in, challenging your own belief in the value of kindness. It can lead you to wonder whether your kindness has any true impact, or whether it's merely an exercise in futility. But there is a painful truth to face here. The silence you receive is often not a measure of the worth of your kindness, but a measure of the emotional void that others may be experiencing. People who are caught in their own struggles or trapped in their own pain may be unable to respond in the way you expect. The very act of receiving kindness might feel foreign to them, something they are not equipped to process or reciprocate. The silence, then, is not a denial of your worth, but a reflection of their inability to engage with what they've been given. Yet, despite this silence, kindness is never truly wasted. Your actions, even if unacknowledged, have a ripple effect. They change the atmosphere of a room, a conversation, a relationship. The silent recipient may not show it, but your kindness might be the seed planted deep within them, one that, given time, could grow into a powerful force for good. What you give out into the world has a way of coming back to you, though not always in the ways you expect. The silence may not be the rejection it feels in the moment, it may simply be a delay in the recognition that, in time, will come. Learning to live with this silence requires resilience. It means accepting that the impact of your kindness might not always be immediately visible. It requires the courage to continue giving, even when your actions seem to go unnoticed. The world may not always provide you with the applause or acknowledgement you seek, but the act of continuing to be kind, regardless, is a testament to your strength. The silence does not take away from the value of what you have given. It simply challenges you to give without expecting anything in return, to give because it is the right thing to do, not because you will receive recognition. Trust is the foundation upon which all meaningful relationships are built. It is the invisible thread that connects people, binds them together in mutual respect and understanding. And yet, in a world where self-interest often trumps the well-being of others, trust is fragile. The very act of being kind, of offering something genuine to someone else, inherently requires a leap of faith. To be kind is to trust that others will not take advantage of your generosity, to believe that they will honor your efforts, your emotions, your time. But in a world where betrayal, manipulation, and selfishness are so often rewarded, that trust can easily be broken. The fragility of trust comes from the fact that many people today are not accustomed to receiving kindness without expecting something in return. Trust is tested every time you extend yourself to others, especially when there is no personal gain involved. The question arises, will they respect what I offer? Will they honor the trust I place in them by being kind in return, or will they use my vulnerability against me? The fear of betrayal can be a paralyzing force, causing you to second-guess your actions and hesitate to offer your kindness freely. What makes trust even more fragile is the human tendency to take advantage of those who show vulnerability. The self-centered world we live in encourages a transactional approach to relationships, where every gesture of kindness is expected to be reciprocated with something of equal value. This transactional mentality means that kindness can be seen as a form of currency, one that can be spent and used without any real appreciation for the emotional or personal investment behind it. When your kindness is used to manipulate or control, trust is shattered. The very act of offering something with an open heart becomes an invitation for others to exploit that trust, leaving you exposed and vulnerable. The emotional toll of this betrayal is immense. It can create a fear of extending trust to anyone, a belief that the risk of being taken advantage of is too great. But to live with this fear is to live in a prison of your own making. If you close yourself off from others, if you refuse to trust because of the possibility of being hurt, you isolate yourself from the beauty of connection. The fragility of trust is not something to be feared, but something to be navigated with wisdom and discernment. To trust is to acknowledge that there is always a risk, but it is also to embrace the possibility of forming genuine, meaningful relationships. However, this fragility does not mean that trust should be abandoned entirely. Instead, it invites us to be more cautious, more aware of the dynamics around us. It calls for a deeper understanding of the people we engage with and an acceptance that not everyone will treat our kindness with the respect it deserves. And yet, the answer is not to withdraw, to build walls around your heart, but to choose where and how to place your trust. Trust is not something to be freely given to everyone, it must be earned and nurtured. Those who respect and honor your kindness, who reciprocate your vulnerability with genuine care, are the ones who deserve your trust. In a world where trust is so easily broken, it takes strength to keep offering it. The fragility of trust should not deter you from being kind, rather, it should encourage you to be more discerning in how you extend it, to place your faith in those who truly value what you offer. The act of trusting again after being hurt is one of the most courageous things you can do. Trust, when placed wisely, is the foundation upon which deeper, more meaningful connections are built. Even in the face of betrayal, trust offers you the opportunity to rise above the selfishness of the world and continue giving of yourself freely, with the knowledge that the right people will value your generosity. In a world that often rewards harshness, selfishness, and cynicism, choosing kindness is an act of profound rebellion. It is an act that requires strength, resilience, and the courage to rise above the forces that would seek to strip you of your humanity. Kindness is not weakness, but a deep and powerful force that challenges the very fabric of our society. It requires you to see beyond the surface, to embrace the complexity of others, to endure silence and disrespect, and to trust in a world that often seems unworthy of such faith. Yet, despite the trials it brings, kindness has the power to transform not just others, but yourself. When you choose to live with kindness, you choose to refuse the bitterness that could consume you. You choose the harder road, the one that asks more of you, but ultimately leads to a life of greater meaning, depth, and connection. You become a force that cannot be broken, no matter how many times you are tested. Each act of kindness, whether seen or unseen, is a building block for something greater, a legacy that transcends the temporary trials and small betrayals of today. In the end, kindness is the quiet but undeniable power that shapes the world. It is not always acknowledged, often goes unreturned, and may be met with silence, but it is never without purpose. Choose kindness, not because it will always be easy or reciprocated, but because it is what makes us human. And in a world where everything else may fall away, it is kindness that will remain steadfast and true as the highest and most enduring form of strength.